Hi, HRN listeners. We're celebrating our 15th anniversary, and we have a really fun campaign and an ask for you. This 15th anniversary tour is aiming to bring you closer to unique food and music experiences in some of the most exciting cities in America. All the while, we're raising funds to support our work empowering the next generation of food system storytellers through our fellowship programs. Here's how it works. Donate to HRN and be entered into a raffle in the city of your choice to win a dinner for two at a noteworthy restaurant and tickets for two to a concert at a prominent local venue. We have incredible partners in New York, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Nashville, Las Vegas, Charleston, Asheville, and Ardmore, Pennsylvania, who have donated a meal for two and two tickets to a concert of the winner's choice. And all donations help fund our fellowship programs, where we're helping to build essential workforce readiness skills and food system storytelling skills. Check out heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. That's heritageradionetwork.org/15. Thank you.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network. HRN is food radio supported by you. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org.
This episode is brought to you by Roberta's, home of Heritage Radio Network since 2009. Learn more about Roberta's at robertaspizza.com.
Culture and Flavor is a podcast about food and culture centered in Black and Indigenous foodways. Hosted by myself, Zella Palmer, right here in New Orleans, Louisiana. Each episode features high vibrational conversations with cultural bearers, chefs, farmers, scholars, barbecue pitmasters, and more. Where there is flavor, there is history. Join me on Culture and Flavor and all of my guests as we share stories that will have you praise dancing, cooking, conjuring, and inspiring your culinary journey. Welcome to another episode of Culture and Flavor with Zella Palmer. Today, I am so excited to talk to just an incredible cultural bearer in the city of New Orleans who has done so much work preserving New Orleans music culture, dance, history, funk. It just goes on and on and on. She's just a Renaissance young woman. Chipo Kandake is a dance ethnographer, a filmmaker, cultural griot, and live performing artist. She received her bachelor's degree from the illustrious Dillard University in New Orleans, Louisiana, in film. She also studied in Dominican Republic and Cuba, and she's been all over the world, Mexico, and the landscape of dance that she has curated has a deep connection to the culture of the South, but specifically to Louisiana. She was born and raised in Houston, Texas, and she grew up on Zydeco music. She has been able to connect the South, Black Southern culture to Latin America, Caribbean, the diaspora, the African diaspora, as well as Africa. Currently, Chipo is the founder of Femme Funk, a platform she founded in 2019 to preserve and highlight Black women's contribution to the funk genre. Chipo continues her research with hopes to unify Black Americans looking to connect back to the diaspora. I'm so excited to have her on this episode. Let's get into it. Welcome, Chipo. Welcome to Culture and Flavor.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for that amazing intro as well. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to be here with you, especially since, it's definitely a full circle moment from Dillard University and being a part of the program that you're the chair of, the Ray Charles program. I learned so much, and it definitely aided in so much research that I'm doing today. So it feels good.
That warms my heart.
Thank you so much for having me.
You were in the inaugural class when I came in as chair, and you have become, just a huge force of light as a student. I was so impressed by just all of the things that you were doing and just your initiative to really preserve culture, to learn as much as you possibly can. And even just working with you to put out our first documentary, The Story of New Orleans Creole Cooking, The Black Hand in the Pot, that's on YouTube. I don't know what I would have done without you, because you are also helped to edit that documentary. So it was definitely, we have definitely collaborated on many things. And eventually you became like family to me, because we spent many Christmases together. You even stayed with me for a little bit. And, I've just been, your cheerleader from the sideline since you graduated. So just you're just awesome. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you. I really
my mother would say, Chipo.
Yes. Shout out Miss Alice.
Yes.
No, thank you for that. And yeah, I'm super excited about this conversation that we about to have today.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, we just, for our listeners that are tuning in, we just, I want this to just be a really natural conversation, because Chipo and I, we have a kind of laughter and humor with each other. And we are super nerds. We're film nerds. We are culture nerds. And it's just refreshing to see someone at her age be so interested in, the 70s, the different genres of music, different historical points, and it's a really good conversation that we're about to have.
Yes, we had some great conversation.
Let's talk about the beginning, Chipo. You were born in Houston, Texas.
Yes, born in H-Town. Home of Beyonce, home of Megan Thee Stallion.
And she got the knees to prove it too.
Yes, I definitely got the knees. Okay, but yes, that's originally from Houston, Texas. And it's so funny because I'm saying all that, and I never, to be quite honest, I haven't been the biggest fan of Houston. I got out as quick as I could, to be honest, because it was just always something about Louisiana. Because that's where my roots are, basically on both sides of my family. They came to Houston from Monroe and New Iberia, Louisiana. And so, yeah, I grew up partially in Houston, partially Little Rock, Arkansas as well. But always in the South. But as soon as I got out of high school, child, I was like, it's time to go. I need some roots. I need to get to some roots. Yeah, so I came to New Orleans like right after that, and started at Dillard. But even while I grew up in Houston, like you kind of mentioned in the bio, Zydeco has always been the backdrop to my life. And it's so funny because I never made the connection with Louisiana growing up, but we will always go to the meat market, get boudin, get, always be making like things like dirty rice. And my family is actually, they big on barbecuing as well. They from the country. So I grew up around all of these things, and it actually wasn't until I came to New Orleans. And honestly, when I started studying more in depth about Creole culture, I'm like, girl, this is where all that comes from. But it never really clicked for some reason. So yeah, it's been very interesting, like finding those full circle moments, like in all of that.
And then you decided to major in film. Yes. And, I want to talk about just your love for film.
By the way.
Totally unexpected. Really? Why did you say that?
My first, when I was in, it all comes full circle, but when I was in high school, I saw a Mary-Kate and Ashley book because they were saying they were anthropologists. At this point in their career. And I remember reading, I was like, oh, I'm an anthropologist because it's like a person who studies culture, people, and how they interact in different places. So I always thought when I started community college and when I started school, I just thought that was the path that I was going to take, that or something in visual with a minor in visual arts. But it was when my godmother, she was actually living in New Orleans at the time, and she was like, I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I just did my first 2 years of school and I'm still not sure about my major because I'm not trying to be sitting down writing papers all day. I'm like, child, I ain't about to be writing papers all day, working for the government like that. I was like, I don't know if that's my life. Like, I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. It just didn't seem right. And she was like looking at me because, shout out to Miss Cherise, that's my godmom. She was like, Chippo, ever since you were a kid, you've been like a film nerd. Like you've been into film. She was like, and the film program had just started at Dillard University, literally the year I got there. And she was just like, you should just move to New Orleans and do film. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. So that's basically how all of that started with filmmaking. But interesting enough, I mean, that has always been a passion of mine, like always been a film nerd, always been that one person. Like, I ain't gonna lie, Zella, it was so nerdy. Like, I had a whole journal of what film I was gonna watch each day. And I used to take notes on them and watch commentaries, all types of crazy stuff. So once I did it, I was like, okay, this makes sense. But as I was like going through school, I started to see how, like, especially through documentary filmmaking, like it basically coincides with the field of sociology, with anthropology, discovering, exploring, and diving deeper into like different cultures and like the way people live. And I was like, oh, okay, so this is just like a tool to do what I always wanted to do. So I quickly realized I'm not really very far off from like my first, what I always said I wanted to be. But it's really just finding those tools within me, like the different mediums to access that. So yeah.
And so while you were a student, you had a curiosity that I found so refreshing. You were always wanting to learn more, and you were always trying to connect with cultural bearers in the city, whether they were New Orleans Black masking Indians or, second line,
Stayed at the second line.
Yeah, you stayed at the second line, and I really think it shaped you as well, and just prepared you for what was next. And then I remember the first time you went out of the country, you went to Dominican Republic and studied in Dominican Republic.
Yes.
Talk about just, I want to start talking about your travels and how you use film and ethnography to kind of tell your stories and tell other people's stories through social media as well as through film.
I mean, yeah, it all started in New Orleans, to be honest, because, this is not my home space. And one thing I learned about myself, that's probably part of me being a Scorpio as well. I like to immerse myself in things and I learn about stuff, I think especially because I spent so much of my childhood reading in the library, researching, it's like when I'm there, it's like, not just going to be a part of, but to actually immerse myself in the culture was so important. That's why, being in New Orleans and like, okay, I'm in New Orleans, so I want to be a part of the second line. So I want to know, where does Black masculine Indian culture come from, or like just being in the streets, quite literally. And by the time I went to Dominican Republic, I had that same mentality, for better or worse. I was in the streets. I was in the calle. That's how, because I'm not gonna lie, like, to any students listening, definitely follow the rules. But
yes, please do. Please
follow the rules. But to be completely honest, the reason why I got the experience I got in Dominican Republic, because I took chances. They told us everything not to do, all the places not to go. But I knew if I stayed within the bubble that I was in, that there was no way I was really going to be able to experience the culture firsthand. So yes, like I was in the neighborhoods with the people, basically living the lifestyle of a Dominican. I was drinking that water. Okay, I was in that water.
Girl, don't tell me you were drinking mama water.
I was drinking the water. I was dancing with the people. I was hanging out with the people. I was at the comando. I was everywhere. Okay, that's what I was doing, because at the end of the day, a very important part about what I do it's like I like to access what's really happening. And so that's why I say street a lot, because it's just like I want to know what's really going on, like in the street, in the neighborhood, because that's where you get a true essence of the people, of the culture, and like the dynamics and what's really going on. So it's like that's what I did, you know. And I think, yeah, it's definitely interesting, especially doing these things like as a Black woman from my lens. And because to be quite frankly, like in the field, like when you think of like anthropologists and all of that, like you see a certain type of people, but you know, usually, but anyway, yeah, so.
Mm-hmm. And then, you know, I'm building it all up for, you know, because I want our listeners to, I know they're going to just fall in love with you because, as you know, everybody loves Chipo. You need a whole TV show that says everybody loves Chipo.
Oh, Lord, no.
But then during the pandemic, you were accepted to a graduate program in the UK. What happened at that moment?
Well, yes, I wasn't accepted yet, but my plan was to go to, London to get my graduate's degree. And I was going out there to check out some schools. But of course, the pandemic hit. I was working, you know, with the CAC, with Material Life. And at that point, I don't know how I ended up, I was doing public programming at the time. And in the art world, I ended up in the art world, which was so far off from where I wanted to be. So when the pandemic hit, it really gave me a chance to stop. I was so happy because I was so overworked at that time, but I got a chance to just stop. But really, it was a blessing because I got to get back to the things that I really love, my true passions, and like my purpose, or everything I'm here to do. And, you know, it all has to do with, you know, healing through dancing and the research that I do with dance movement, dance cultures, just to connect Black people all over the world, and specifically, you know, rooted in Louisiana and New Orleans. So it's just like during that time, I just became even more a nerd because there was nothing else to do. So I did everything I did as a kid, which was, you know, basically reading about culture, studying, you know, watching documentaries. And then it got to the point where it was just like, I took a chance. They told us to stay inside the house. I said, I'm not staying inside the house. I'm like, I'm going to take this moment right now to go and do the research that's been basically in my head for like all of my adulthood, and just started doing it right now. And I started to GoFundMe. The universe blessed me. I got the money, and I moved to Mexico to start researching indigenous dance, Mayan dances there, and connecting it back to Louisiana. And from there, like I just went full throttle into going deep into my practice, deep into my art, and deep into my purpose. So, yeah.
What are some of the things that you learned, and you know, just connecting Louisiana to Mexico to Dominican Republic? What were some of the takeaways? You know, just reflecting on it now, because you left Mexico. You've been gone from Mexico for a couple of years now, right? If I'm not mistaken, a year or so. What are some of the connections that you made?
I mean, the biggest connection which I think probably surprised me the most that I learned in Mexico, was how, not just because I was in the Yucatan mostly, that area, but all over Mexico, how Mexican people are so connected to West African dance from Guinea. I thought that was crazy. I was like, I knew, because it's just like, even in America, you know, we definitely have, in the Black community, there's a lot of, we do a lot of practices, you know, when it comes to like learning about West African dance, but how intense it is in Mexico is crazy. Like they have communities literally in every state throughout the country of like people who they don't just do the African dance and it's not in a way of like exploitation, like they live it. Like I'm talking about, these are my friends, like they sleep in tents, they're hippies, like that kind of energy, and they drum, they wake up every day and drum. They drum like they come straight from Africa. They be drumming and they be dancing, they tail off. And I think that was probably like learning that connection and just making more connections with, the history of like how that even came to Mexico, and why that was a thing, which dates back all the way to things like Veracruz, and then learning how like there were settlers from New Orleans who basically people from New Orleans in the early 1900s who came to Veracruz and started their own town as well, their own communities. Like things just started to make more sense to me, and even seeing the similarities in Dominican Republic. I mean, basically the product of slavery and colonization and how like similar cultures and similar sounds were developed between Zydeco and merengue típico, which happens in the Campos, just like in Louisiana, and they have their own, like they're not trail rides, but they're very similar to the culture of trail rides like in Louisiana as well. So it was dope to always see, because I'm all about making similarities, comparing than I am contrasting, because I feel like, like people just need to come together. So
Absolutely. People need to come together. And I remember there was an exhibit in Chicago at the Mexican Art Museum there, and it was called African Presence in Mexico. And it went on tour to other museums for quite some time, and the connection and the links historically from goes way back, and it's very deep. So I was so excited for you to go there. I lived there as a little girl when my dad worked there, and I have very fond memories of living in Mexico as a child, and to see you post, and even being able to visit you over there and just see you become Chipo, to become the Chipo that, and the evolution of Chipo, I should say, was such a beautiful sight to see, because I think I've known you since you were like 19 or so, whenever you started at Dillard, I can't remember. And then I want to talk about Femme Funk. Femme Funk, you're not only a film lover, but you're a music lover as well. We've always had deep conversations about film, and we're going to get into that later after the break to talk about our favorite films. We've even done like a little YouTube together, which was so much fun.
Oh, yeah, that was funny. Dang.
What was the name of that? I can't remember the name of it now.
That's it.
It's on I know that's how many years ago it was ago. But we used to just have fun and just nerd out on films, and and then definitely music. You have a deep love for music that I think has, helped you launch Femme Funk, because you recently had an event here in New Orleans. I mean, there were so many people at that event just to see, your work, because you've used social media as a platform to talk about culture, dance, music, even New Orleans bounce music. I mean, you caused a controversy in the city by some of your research, right?
A couple things I said, didn't say it. Yeah, Lord.
So talk a little bit about, just your love for music and Femme Funk.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I do have a deep, I would definitely have to say, when it comes to music, my love for music runs a lot deeper than my love for film. It's been since I was a kid. And, when I started Femme Funk, one, I'm a funketeer all day, every day. Like, I think, I don't necessarily have a favorite genre, but just based off of like everything I know about music for me personally in contemporary times, funk is the epicenter of everything. It's a culmination of everything that came before, and it was the blueprint for everything after, you know? And so that's why for me, when I started Femme Funk, and obviously emphasis on the film, I saw the discrepancy. You know, look, we live in a society, you know, post-colonial society where it's just like patriarchy had its play, and it even had its play within our own communities. And because of that, you know, in funk music, you know, we love the funk OGs. We love James Brown. We love Sly. We love George. We love all of them. But, you know, what I was seeing, there was a lot of films. And when I say films, I mean women or anybody that's film identified, you know, who just did not get their just due. They kind of been made invisible over the years, or people don't know the full extent to what they contributed to culture, to music, to, you know, everything that represents popular culture today. And the thing about funk is all about liberation, you know, freedom of expression. That's what makes it so, that's why it's such a powerful genre. And I mean, it was the music that was the soundtrack to the civil rights movement, to the Black Panther movement. This is the music that introduced us to, like, you know, some really psychedelic stuff. Like, you know, we're just gonna walk around in diapers, you know what I'm saying?
I know.
Like, y'all ain't never seen Black people look like that. Like, I was like, you know, it's just like we out of space now. Like, you know,
the mothership.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So it was just like really show how beyond and really creating like a future that, you know, maybe doesn't exist right now, maybe doesn't see. So it's a really powerful genre, and just musically, technically, it set the blueprint for everything we listen to, from hip hop, from, you know, house, from techno, from jungle to trap, to all of this stuff. Like, it cannot be done without funk. But like I said, there's so many key players, from, you know, Malia Franklin, and even like I was just talking about fashion designers like Ola Hudson, Dawn Silver from Brides and Funkenstein, and even Millie Jackson. You know, she definitely gets her flowers, but I don't think people realize to the extent, like, you know, how these women really paved the way. And even some trans like women, like Jackie, and even like Katie Red, first ever trans, gay, whatever you want to call it, but queer rapper ever. And it's like when you listen to the samples and the energy, it's like all about freedom of expression, you know, not caring what nobody think, you know, just like Sly said, just like George said, into my own thing type of energy. And so I definitely created that platform to highlight the underdogs, the people who are unsung, you know, who are alive, past, and present, you know, the artists that are coming up right now who, you know, quite frankly, just needs to get their flowers, you know, y'all need to put some respect on their name, okay, at the end of the day. So, one of
the femmes that you celebrated on your social media page, Femme Funk, that I was so happy that you know, celebrated, gave her flowers, and did this beautiful, you know, tribute to her, was Betty Davis. I mean, Betty Davis, hands down, you know, and Miles Davis, you know, in the midpoint of his career, would it not be who he, you know, his career might have just stayed stagnant.
Revived him, yeah.
Yeah, she revived him. And, you know, to see the younger generation, you know, to talk about her and to give her flowers. I mean, you know, she was a powerhouse, you know, powerhouse.
Yeah. She was made for this generation because she was too advanced. She was a lot for that time period. So yes, you know, shout out to Betty Davis for really paving the way for so many of us today. I mean, she was doing some stuff like she made James Brown mad. James Brown wasn't messing with her. He was like, oh no. He said, that's too much. And it's so funny. She does everything that basically what female rappers do today, from Meg Thee Stallion to Cardi B to, you know, the list goes on and on. She did that. She did that in the 70s when people shut it down. So shout out.
And you recently met George Clinton, correct?
Yeah. I met George. I think it was about a year and a half ago now. Yeah, I met him a while ago, which I don't know, it was dope. I mean, like I said, my biggest takeaway from meeting George Clinton was just seeing how happy he was. And, you know, he's now in this new era. He took over the music game. You know what I'm saying? He did that. And now he's taking over the art world. And it's really inspiring to see, you know, him just using, you know, still carry on the funk, but like now doing it through different mediums. I don't know. Right now, I don't really have much to say about George, but it's just good to see him.
Yeah. And, you know, just, I think, you know, you provided so much education online. You know, when you were talking, you did that one about Elvis and, you know, how he culturally appropriated the blues, you know, and even just fast forwarding to the funk is behind so many genres, just like you said, but, you know, you've also really curated and been a ethnographer for New Orleans bounce music. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I really love bounce music so much. And I think bounce is, in its own way, it's very like rebellious. And I think a lot, but it's been difficult though, because one thing about the genres like this is that, you know, they're so in the moment. They're so like, you know, you just have to be there, that the preservation kind of falls off as a result. And so, you know, it's just been really interesting, like, because I'm still learning, to be quite honest with you, like in everything when it comes to bounce music. But, you know, it's frustrating because it's just like, man, like, you know, this, you know, as somebody, especially that's not from New Orleans, like doing this research, it's like there's not really one place or too many sources where you can rely to know the origins of bounce. And it's so crazy because, you know, bounce has been going on longer than it's been recorded. Like, even though, you know, everybody knows where they at as like the official first recorded bounce song, which was around, do not quote me on this, I believe it's around 93, somewhere around that time. Bounce was happening in the mid to late, you know, since the mid 80s. You see what I'm saying? And it's just like, you know, I feel like New Orleans is the epicenter of so much in music and culture. That's why it's just so important for me to just get the facts straight so people know, like, a lot of the stuff that y'all doing is started here. You know, even with the twerk thing, the twerk craze, you know, Cheeky Black, right? She coined the term. You know what I'm saying? Cheeky Black coined the twerk term, and a lot of people do not know that. They do not know that started in New Orleans. So, you know, I'm always about setting the record straight, getting down to the truth, getting down to the bottom, all the way down to the records, you know. So, yeah.
Well, we're going to come back after a few messages from our sponsors, and we thank you for listening to Culture and Flavor. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more with Chipo about some of our favorite films and, you know, just some songs and music that relates back to food and culture. So thank you for joining us. We'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Roberta's, home of Heritage Radio Network. Roberta's was founded in Bushwick in 2008 and has become one of the most iconic restaurants in the country. HRN made its home inside of Roberta's in 2009, and together they have become part of the DIY fabric of the neighborhood. Roberta's is open for lunch and dinners 7 days a week and serves much more than just the famous wood-fired pizzas. Their team dreams up new salads, pastas, and sandwiches on the regular. Roberta's Tiki Bar is alive and well in the back garden, serving up frozen drinks in the summer and hot toddies in the winter. Stop by the bakery and takeout spot next door for fresh breads, sticky buns, and pizzas to go. But Roberta's also extends beyond Bushwick, with multiple locations in New York City, Long Island, and Los Angeles. You can also find their frozen pies in grocery stores around the country. The spirit of Roberta's, like Heritage Radio Network, is everywhere. Here's to many more years of pizza-powered radio. Learn more about Roberta's at robertaspizza.com.
All right, so we're back with Chipo, and I'm excited to just kind of talk about, I was thinking about, I curated this playlist, and, you're always curating music as well. And I was thinking about James Brown and Pass the Peas and how, music is really the soundtrack of our lives, and especially African-American experiences, and how, there's songs out there when you even, and like you love funk. I love salsa. I'm a salsera any day, and I love it makes me happy. And, and funk and salsa comes together at some point. Blues is all connected, and hip hop and bounce. And I think about songs like Arroz con Habichuelas, it talks about rice and beans, and, all of these different songs, it pinpoints a historical point in time, and what are some of the songs that you resonate with? I know you have a lot of them, but I'm just thinking off the top of your head that you've been listening to lately that you just kind of motivates you or has you thinking about history and culture.
A song? I don't know. Tutti Frutti, James Brown. Not James Brown. Oh Lord, Little Richard gonna come down and strike me.
Girl, yes, he is.
Little Richard, child. Little Richard. I don't know. I mean, quite honestly, yeah. That's a difficult question for me because, I don't know. Music, song is just, they're so loaded with so many things, especially culturally, historically, like every piece of music, it's like a timestamp. So it's just like, I can't really, it would be hard to pick a song or to pick something that I'm listening to at the moment, that really takes me there.
Okay.
To be honest. So yeah, that one I have to contemplate.
Okay, that's fair. When you, in your recent performance, the live performance that you did in New Orleans, can you talk a little bit about that and some of the music that you played there that you performed to?
Yeah, so basically in my performance, I just wanted to highlight kind of the evolution of funk in its many forms, specifically around hip hop, taking it all the way from the 70s to present day, just to show the correlation. And I was really inspired by Lynn Collins. Lynn Collins was the female preacher of funk coined by James Brown. She was a part of the James Brown Revenue, and her song was the most sampled, one of the most sampled songs ever, just ever. It's to this day. Like there's a song that just came out by Nicki Minaj that just sampled it. Like that's how deep that sample goes, and it's not in all genres. And so,
what's the name of the song again?
The song is called Think by Lynn Collins.
Yes.
And so it's the breakdown part by Clyde Stubblefield. That's the main part of it that gets sampled, and yeah, like I said, in everything. So what I did was put together music that incorporated like all these samples from, early funk, Lynn Collins, to Patra and Dancehall, who actually did a collaboration with her while she was still alive, to, and quit, from Florida, Miami bass to, bounce music to, female trap that's being played today. And I just correlated all the dance moves that represent each era during the performance. So it's just like a whole evolution. But all of this is being driven by Lynn Collins in the background. And yeah. So that's basically what my performance was about.
I mean, I wasn't able to attend. I was out of town, but I mean, it looked amazing, and you were able to bring so many people together. And, I think, like I said, just you educating folks about music and culture on Femme Funk, or whether on your personal page, I think is really profound. Whether it's through dance or music or, history. I want to talk a little bit about just our favorite, some of your favorite films. I was, thinking about some of our mini film nights where we, nerd out and watch movies. And I was thinking just some movies that came off the top of my head that, that some of them, and I don't know if you've seen some of them, you might have. I know you've seen a few of them for sure. But some of my favorites are Chocolate. I love that film with Johnny Depp. Like Water for Chocolate, classic film. Soul Food was a classic film when you talk about food and culture, and just it's an iconic movie. Claudine, love Diane Carroll in that. Auntie Mame is really special for me because it was the last film I was able to watch with my mom before she passed. And we had a really special moment just laughing. And I'll never forget that scene in Auntie Mame where it says, live, 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 where she tells everyone, live, live, live. And then her nephew comes in the house and she's letting him try caviar for the first time. Big Night is also a great one.
Yes, I love Big Night.
I love Big Night. Uwasi is a Cuban film, and it's a great film because it shows Cuba through the eyes of a child, and there's some great food scenes in there as well, where they're eating eggs and rice, and it basically shows you like what it's like to live on both sides, those who are pro-Fidel and those who are not pro-Fidel, living in the same country. I did see the movie Chef recently. I couldn't stand that movie.
Oh, God.
I was wondering, the Black women that were in the kitchen, how come they didn't rebel and they were just okay with, him burning the whole restaurant on fire?
Oh, shoot.
Girl, I couldn't stand that movie, and I know that some people love that film, but I'm just like, okay, nobody was in the kitchen. Like, no, we're not burning together.
Oh, yeah, that was crazy. That might get my blood boiling too.
Right.
I don't know about that.
What are some of the films? And I know that we both love 70s movies. I mean, we could sit there and watch them all day. What are some of the films that you your top 5, I should say?
Top 5 films? I mean, at number 1 is definitely Velvet Goldmine. Velvet Goldmine, talks about the history of glam rock through fictionalized stories. So you got Velvet Goldmine is definitely a favorite. Besides Velvet Goldmine, what would be my favorite films? Whew, child, another hard question. Definitely Velvet Goldmine for sure. Because that's just one I always come back to. Dang, Zella, you asked me all these hard questions.
That's not hard.
Yes, it is. There's so many. I
Black
would have to.
Go ahead.
Negro or Feo. Yeah, Black
Oh,
Orpheus.
Feo Negro. I mean, that's a
Yes.
classic film. Black
It's a
Orpheus.
classic. Yes, no, I love that film so much. It's not my favorite though. That's your favorite.
That's my favorite. I'll make you watch it 20 times.
But yeah, I definitely grew up on that film and I loved it. I mean, such a beautiful film to showcase just Brazil and just Black people in Brazil, through this like tragic story, that really incorporates spirituality and all of that. Like it's just a must-see, a classic. But as far as my favorites, I mean, I guess I got one. Velvet Goldmine is just the one that sticks out because it's the one I always go back to. But there's just so many amazing films. I love Girl 6 as well.
Good one.
Spike Lee, soundtrack on totally by Prince.
Yes.
I think as well, Graffiti Bridge.
Oh my God. See, now you talk about language. Don't let me start talking about Prince. I'll go into we need a whole podcast just about Prince.
I know we do, but like all this campy, I'm talking all these campy films, Velvet Goldmine, Graffiti Bridge. It's so ridiculous, but it's so good.
I love that one.
Graffiti Bridge and yeah. I made it to 3. Good.
Like,
if I think any longer, this podcast is gonna be over.
I'm trying to think about some of the movies that we would watch with my mom. Oh, there was that Jamaican movie that you showed me. Remember about the dance hall queen?
Baby Mother. It's called Baby Mother. It's about
that was a good one.
The dance hall culture in London.
Yes, that was a good one. That's a classic.
That's a classic.
Classic.
No, I love that. But yeah, there's so many films out there, quite honestly. And I mean, even thinking before I got on this podcast, I was just like, let me think of films that really show and that really talk about, kind of like the culinary and the food histories, of Black culture. And I was even specifically thinking about America. And honestly, let me just be quite frank, outside of soul food, like there's not really that much in film that we have. And I think, this could be a good moment if it's any filmmakers listening to start telling these culinary stories. And I think for sure we've had revival with a lot of documentary films that's been coming out, and even the one that you did that I edited that's really telling the history. But I think there's a void of that because that one I had to scratch my head on a lot. And soul food is great and all, but I don't want to see no film about Big Mama losing her leg. Like, you know what I'm saying? Let's just keep it real. Like,
let's keep it real.
Let's keep it real. And it's just like, Black food is so diverse and the history is so rich as well. And it's beyond the soul food. And I think, I would love to see more of that in film and documentaries. And it's so amazing that, we have a few films that's been coming out, like High on the Hog, and that's on Netflix, that showcases like the history, behind the way we eat. But, there's definitely a void.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely. And I remember recently we watched the movie To Sleep with Anger. Danny Glover was in that film. So that was really good. So good. Highly suggest our listeners look into that one. A classic film, and it really, talks about just deep Southern culture, deep Southern Black culture. And, that time period where many during the Great Migration left and moved to other areas. And, some of the practices that they kept, some that they chose not to continue with, and, and what happens when people move, and the memories and trauma sometimes that they hold.
No, that movie was, honestly, that was an amazing movie. And I think that movie was also a perfect example of how, like, they even touched on the spirituality of it as well, without being so on the nose. And I think that was really important. Yeah, no, that one I definitely recommend it. That's a 10 out of 10 for me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, but that's a classic film that I don't think gets enough flowers. And Danny Glover is such an amazing actor, and everyone who was in that film was also had where it was in the Cosby Show, and I can't remember all of their names, but I've seen them in old episodes of the Cosby Show. So that pool of Black actors had been rotated many times in other performances and shows. But I want to also talk about you're also a vegan. You inspire me. I just want you to know that. Kind of.
Yes.
No, I wanted to say that because when you came on campus, I think, you also change. And I think some students, vegans, college students are also, advocating for their food systems to be better, And I do believe that, by you like always pushing, no, I'm going to eat this, and showing other students and, and doing things on a budget, I think really helped to change and, just our cafeteria, encouraging other students on campus as well. And I've watched you, through the years, just continue to evolve and create beautiful recipes as well, just for yourself. And even for your friends, like when I saw in Mexico, when you made vegan mafe, I was like, oh, look at her making mafe. Okay.
Yes, my favorite dish to make. But yeah, no, for sure. Like, yeah, I think the most hilarious thing was that I moved to New Orleans and became a vegan. Like literally within the first month I was here. And I know people was like, how could you possibly do that? So I never was that person that came and had the po' boys and all the stuff that people come to New Orleans for. Like, I don't know, something in my spirit just told me that, I don't want to do that no more. And I was around friends who were from New Orleans and vegan. So it made it a lot easier, like learning from them how they cook and everything. And yeah, it was interesting being on campus as well. Doing that, because this was back before vegan was a trend. This was when this is when nobody was really about it. So yeah, I mean, it was really beautiful. And I think honestly, like being vegan, traveling, and just learning more about like my heritage, I feel like on a spiritual level, like I resonate with a more plant-based diet because it's more true to my lineage and my bloodline. Because I remember one of my favorite stories to retell was when I was in Paris and I was hanging around a bunch of Congolese people. And he asked, there was a Nigerian girl there actually, and he would ask her if she was vegan, because we all were vegan, plant-based. And she was just like, I'm African, when he asked her if she was vegan. Now, the girl is Nigerian and she's vegan. So saying all that to say, she was like, of course I'm vegan because I'm African. And it was just so, and that's basically what she was saying. And he wrote a whole article about it. If you can read Portuguese, you should definitely check it out. But
I can, so I want you to send that to me.
Yes, I'll send it to you. And basically, that was a deep moment, because as I was talking to my friend Ricardo, shout out to Ricardo, he was saying how growing up, because he grew up in the Congo. This is not somebody, even though he lives in France now, he grew up in the Congo, and he talked about how his grandmother cooked all the time. And he was like, the food was just what people call vegan now, was naturally vegan. And they would just eat meat for special occasions, kind of thing. But he was like, all our food was naturally vegan. And he talked a lot about how colonization in Africa is what introduced all that meat into the diet. Because he said, we never was eating meat like that. And like, if we did, it was like very special occasion, like for a big holiday or something like that. And I thought that was really interesting, because the narrative that gets spun a lot is the total opposite. And it's so interesting to see how, meat is a part of a lot of people's diet today, but that's basically an effect, has been a result of colonization worldwide. And I'm just like,
Absolutely.
wow, and so it was dope. Like, it was really dope just being around them and just kind of getting like that information, like literally from source, from somebody who grew up in the Congo instead of like reading about it, So
I think we always just have to remember, that when different tribes from West and Central Africa were targeted and trafficked and enslaved and brought to this country, they were skilled workers. They were skilled. And I don't want to say workers. I remove that. They were skilled, and specifically in agriculture. And when I think about like some of our elders, and just thinking about some interviews that I did with Mother Doretha Mitchell, who is Ed Mitchell, the Ed Mitchell's Barbecue that I just the book that I just put out, and she was
amazing book.
Thank you, boo. I appreciate that. No, but she talked about just how they were always growing their own food in the South, and nobody could afford to go to the supermarket, and a cow was expensive. That was for milk. You were that was a prized possession. And you weren't gonna kill your cow like that. And so the consumption of meat that we have in the States is over the top now. And I remember just even a friend of mine, she was Irish, we went to the Taste of Chicago many years ago. And she said, God, you all eat so much meat in America. She's like, it's insane, And she's like, every meal that you all have to have meat. Like, why? And I think, those are what you just said about film and visuals and, storytelling. We have to change the narrative. People like yourself, people like, many cultural bearers out there are using social media as a platform when the major deals don't actually sometimes come our way, right? We're just beginning to tell our stories again, because we've told our stories before in different times. I think in American history, James Baldwin, Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison. And I think there is a renaissance happening right now where, our stories are being told because we're telling it to each other in social media and in conversation. And, I do feel that sometimes, and it's no shade to hip hop artists or anything. They were just trying to make money and, they got those deals, but it did do a lot of damage to our communities in the sense that that's the only thing we see is that.
That's the way to get out or the way.
Yeah, there's no nuance, and, Black folks and Indigenous folks worldwide are not a monolith, No, we're so much more.
Not at all. Not at all. So, yeah, I think I definitely agree with you. I think right now, just like Beyonce said, we in a renaissance. So, a lot of new voices and new things are emerging. I definitely look forward to seeing, everything that comes from it. And, you're a part of that as well,
You too.
A great storyteller. Great historian and all of that. So, and I think the more that we all just continue to put out the work and tell these stories. I mean, you're doing it right now through your podcast. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like preserving, Black, Indigenous, food practices, histories that, are not common because this is not stuff that we are taught in school. And these aren't things that are normally talked about within homes. So like what you're doing is very valuable. It's really edgy because it's like it challenges a lot of things as well. A lot of the norm and, what's already in history. And I think it's important that, we keep putting out this work. We keep putting out the work because it's making a huge difference. 100%.
I just want to give you your flowers because I've just seen you just grow so much. You're just, you were loved by my parents when they were here on this earth. They would just light up, every Christmas when you would come over and they just say, Chipo, and the many beautiful holidays, because my house was always open to any student in need.
Yes,
and
shout out to Buzz and Alice.
And they enjoyed watching movies, with you. So I appreciate you. I just want to thank you for those special moments that we had. Until
thank you for having me.
Transition. Of course. So what are some of the things that you're going to do in the future? What are some of the things that you're thinking of, or what can people look forward to now that you have done this stellar, girl, you tore it down. I was like, what? Look at Chipo. You had hundreds of people. What did you tell me? You sold out in like 24 hours or in the end?
Sell out, but sold 750 tickets in a couple of hours on the day of the performance, which I'm pretty sure is over capacity. So that was just like
crazy.
That blew my mind because I didn't think that many people cared. But yes, coming up for Femme Funk, and that was my first Femme Funk performance. So definitely be on the lookout for more Femme Funk performances, not just throughout New Orleans, but throughout the state. So yes, that's coming up, as well as just more content centered around dance history, more of my bounce history rollout content, just celebrating all the OGs, especially the women from Mia X, the Cheeky Black to Miss T, and all of that. And more dance healing. I will be teaching my Shake with Chipo dance classes, all about connecting to your sensuality and being comfortable with your body, at the CAC, and at Dancing Ground. Yeah, the Contemporary Arts Center of New Orleans, and as well as Dancing Ground. So you just check my page, my Instagram at Kandake, Kandake, and also follow me at Femme Funk, just to be up to date with everything that's coming up. So yeah.
I'm excited for that. And I just want to kind of, just end this episode. Just, I have been, Catherine Dunham was such a huge, icon for me when I was growing up. I remember when I was little, I started out as an acrobat. And my teacher told me, I think I was like 5 years old, my teacher told my mom that I needed to learn more grace. So she put me in ballet classes. And then I eventually ended up at a performing arts high school when they did have a performing arts high school in a public school in Chicago. Shout out to Lincoln Park High School, which is my alma mater. And I was able to, study at Alvin Ailey when I was 16. And that really changed my life. And I remember my dance teacher, she was like the Debbie Allen of Chicago, and we call her Miss Mack. And Miss Mack, introduced me to Catherine Dunham. And I always knew that I wanted to, travel the world and be a cultural anthropologist, and just figure out how to tell stories. But I didn't know how to do that yet. And I think when I look back, we didn't have Black ballerinas, or didn't have a lot of examples. Alicia Alonso in Cuba, but that was like way before our time, and Catherine Dunham. So we only had to look at like reels. We didn't have Misty Copeland, who was breaking barriers. So to see, just the evolution of what you're doing and my generation, as someone from a different generation than yours, and how you're using dance to tell stories and to travel and, document is so profound to me. And I'm just so excited to see where you are headed, just because it's just the beginning, So I want to encourage our listeners to definitely follow Chipo Kandake at Chipo Kandake. I think it is correct, right? On Instagram. And, just follow her, because we need her in our, at this moment in history. So I just wanted to give you your flowers.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. And like I said, I learned from the best. So talk about you.
Aww.
So yes.
Well,
I really appreciate that.
Well, wishing you, bendiciones, ashe. Yes. And thank you all for joining Culture and Flavor. This is another beautiful episode. And thank you for listening. And we look forward to the next one. See y'all later. Culture and Flavor is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.
Hey there, I'm Lee Ullman here with some big news from the National Young Farmers Coalition. We're partnering with Heritage Radio Network on a special season of The Farm Report. It's all about what's happening with the Farm Bill and how it impacts farmers and eaters.
I am growing diversified vegetables on land that's been in our family for 150 years.
And so with the pandemic, gentrification, property values going up, we had to sell the land and we lost it.
Join us as we uncover the untold stories behind this massive piece of legislation that shapes how we grow our food, what we eat, and so much more.
The problems we have had, those are things that come from earlier Farm Bill and USDA policy, right? Like Earl Butts, get big or get out.
It's my responsibility to know not only what I'm eating, but then like how that all came to be, and realize like, wow, like this piece of legislation, all this money, like it's technically something that I support as a taxpayer.
While Congress debates the next Farm Bill, this is not just an invitation to listen. It's a call to action. Be part of the conversation. Subscribe to The Farm Report on Heritage Radio Network, wherever you listen to podcasts.